and moved to Dalat on a misty morning. He squeezed his way down from the long-distance coach from Toi Wa, a heavy backpack on his shoulder, walking slowly up a slope slick with rain. The school Lin was about to attend, a small university nestled deep in a pine forest, at first sounded unfamiliar. But it was precisely that quietness that made him feel more at ease compared to the hectic pace back home. And looked up at the old silver-painted iron gate. Behind it was a row of pale yellow classroom buildings, moss-covered through the years. Standing at the gate was a girl in a black coat, wearing a name tag, calling out loudly, "Are you in? The new student from the psychology department, right?" And nodded, adjusted his backpack strap, then walked closer. "Yes, that's me, sis. I just came up from Fu Yen." The girl held out her hand, smiling kindly. "I'm Na, class monitor. Follow me, I'll show you to the dormitory." The dorm was behind the classroom block, backed by pine forest, with a small misty lake in front, and followed Na along a long corridor, each step echoing on the cold ceramic tiles. Na pointed at room 204, opened the door, then said, "This room has 2 beds left. You'll be sharing with 2 other guys," and put his things down on the bed in the corner. Looking around the simple room, the smell of old wood and damp rain mixing in the air, Na added, "Ah, your roommates are Khôi and Tri. But Khôi just went back home for some family stuff. He'll probably be back tomorrow." And nodded, then asked, "What about Tri, sis? Where is he?" Na tilted her head slightly, her gaze a bit hesitant. "Tri also just went home. But," she paused for a moment, then smiled gently, "don't worry. Settle in first. You'll meet everyone tomorrow." And found it a bit strange but didn't ask further. That evening, he went to the canteen to buy some instant noodles and returned to the room. It was drizzling outside the window. The room was cold, with only the sound of wind and dripping water, and was studying for a bit when he heard the door open behind him. He turned and saw a male student walk in, tall, wearing a gray shirt, glasses, and silent except for a slight nod, and stood up, smiling. "You're Tri, right? I'm in. Just moved in." The other guy looked at him for a few seconds, then quietly replied, "Yeah, Tri," and continued, "I heard Khôi is also staying here. Do you know when he'll be back?" Tri dropped his backpack on the opposite bed and replied curtly, "Khôi won't be coming back," and froze a little. "Huh? But Na said he'd be back tomorrow?" Tri didn't respond, only gave a faint smile. Then he turned to face the wall and lay down. That night, and lay awake, listening to the wind against the glass. Around midnight, he was startled awake by the sound of very faint footsteps, slow and steady, coming from inside the room. He gently turned his head toward Tri. The guy was still lying there, back to the wall, motionless. But the footsteps were still there. Very soft, very close, as if someone else was walking around the room, searching for something. The next morning, and woke to pale white sunlight filtering through the window. Tri was no longer in the room. The other bed had been neatly made, but the pillow was still slightly damp, as if someone had just been lying there all night. And washed his face and stepped out. As he reached the staircase, he saw Na walking over from area A. She waved. "An, you good? Slept well?" And scratched his head, smiled lightly. "Yeah, pretty okay. But, yesterday you said Khôi would be back today. But Tri said he's not coming back anymore." Na paused briefly. Her eyes flickered strangely. Then she said, "Tri said that?" And nodded. "Yes, I thought he was joking, but his tone was really odd. He just lay all night facing the wall. Didn't say anything else." Na stayed silent for a moment, then softly said, "Khôi used to stay there. But something happened," and frowned. "What happened, sis?" Na looked around, then gently pulled an aside behind a big pine tree, away from the main path. She spoke very slowly. "It happened near the end of last semester. One day, Khôi and Tri had a fight in the room, but no one knew why. The next morning, Tri reported to the dorm staff that Khôi had moved out, but no one ever confirmed that, and quickly asked, 'So, no one has seen Khôi since?' Na nodded. "No, and no family ever came to the school either." She looked him straight in the eyes. but some people said they saw someone wearing Khoi's coat, walking up to room 204 at night that afternoon, and had his first class. It was a small class, only about 15 students. Try sat in the back row, wearing headphones, head down the whole time, and picked a seat near the window and started taking notes. When the lecturer called roll and reached Khoi's name, she paused. Why is Nguyen Lei Khoi still on this list? Didn't he transfer out? A girl sitting in the front row turned and said softly. I remember Try said he already withdrew his documents. Ma'am. The lecturer crossed the name off the list lightly. All right, I'll update it. Withdrawn, and leaned slightly, glancing at Try in the back. He still had his head down, fiddling with his pen, face emotionless. That evening, when returning to the room, and saw the door left slightly open, he pushed it in and saw Try sitting at the desk, staring straight into the mirror. No lights were on. The room was lit only by moonlight peeking through the window. And spoke up. Why didn't you turn on the light? Try didn't turn around, just said softly, I see just fine, and hesitated a bit, then approached the bed. As he sat down, Try suddenly asked, when you were a kid, did you ever play with mirrors? And looked surprised. You mean, that mirror ghost game? No, we don't have that stuff where I'm from. Try nodded slightly. Good, never try it. Mirrors don't just reflect. They keep. Especially if you stare too long, there'll be an image that won't leave. And felt a chill crawl down his spine. He turned on the light. The room brightened again, cutting through that vague feeling. Try remained still, but his eyes now stared directly into the mirror. Then he smiled faintly and whispered so softly, I know you're still there. Khoi. The next morning, and woke up late, he rubbed his eyes and looked over to the other bed. But Try was already gone. The door was ajar, and a corner of a damp towel was lying on the floor, as if someone had cleaned up in a hurry. And stepped out into the hallway. The morning air still crisp. He headed to the canteen to buy a sandwich and happened to run into Na again. She smiled and asked, getting used to the room yet? Everything all right? And nodded. Yeah, I'm getting used to it. But I find Try kind of strange. He talks like there's someone else in the room. But it's just the two of us. Na paused, then let out a soft sigh and said gently, Try's been different ever since what happened with Khoi. And looked surprised. What do you mean, sis? Na looked around, saw no one was listening, then whispered, I once heard someone from the same dorm wing say, Try and Khoi used to be very close, like childhood best friends. Then all of a sudden, they barely talked to each other anymore. And tilted his head. They had a fight? Na nodded slightly. Yeah, one time, Try shouted in the room, saying Khoi was the unchosen copy. I didn't really understand what he meant. But after that, Khoi disappeared, and tightened the strap of his backpack. Last night, I saw Try talking to the mirror. He called out Khoi's name, like he was answering someone. Na's expression changed slightly. She asked again, mirror? And nodded. The small mirror on the study desk. Na fell silent, then spoke slowly. Khoi used to be really afraid of mirrors. One time he said, every time I look into one, I see someone else living my life for me. I thought he was joking. That afternoon, it rained, and was studying when Try came back to the room. He was wearing a raincoat, soaked through, hair plastered to his forehead, and turned and asked, you're all wet, why didn't you wait out the rain? Try didn't answer. He walked straight to the desk, pulled a dry towel from the drawer, and wiped his face. After a while, Try turned and asked, and have you ever felt like you were living someone else's life? And looked confused. What do you mean? Why would you say that? Try gave a faint smile. Eyes distant, like someone is born, but they don't get the lead role in their own life. And you step in, take their name, live their life, without knowing why. And replied slowly, I haven't, but that sounds like what happened between you and Khoi. Try fell silent. After a moment, he quietly said, we're twins, but only I was kept by our parents. And was startled, sitting upright. You mean, you and Khoi are actual twins? Try nodded. Identical twins, but the doctor said it was best to keep only one. Khoi was weaker. I was chosen. But I can never forget the look in my mother's eyes when she glanced at the empty crib and was speechless, unsure what to say. Try lowered his head, whispering as if to himself. Every time I look in the mirror, I see him. Not me, but him. He's standing there, staring straight at me, asking, "Why was it you?" That night, and couldn't sleep. The rain kept falling softly on the tin roof. Around midnight, he heard whispering from the study desk. Try was sitting in front of the mirror, his back long and shadowed under the dim yellow light, and slowly sat up, walked closer. Try didn't look up, only whispered, "See? I told you he never left," and stood still, trying to look into the mirror. But in the hazy mirror, there was only Try, and a faint white figure behind Try, leaning close, placing a hand on his shoulder, and stepped back. The desk lamp flickered, then steadied. In that instant, the white figure behind Try also vanished. Try turned his head, expression calm as if nothing had happened. "Did you see something?" and swallowed hard, then spoke slowly. "I thought I saw someone standing behind you. Maybe I was seeing things." Try gave a soft, cold laugh. "It wasn't your imagination. You're just not used to someone living in the shadows," and sat down on his bed, his chest still tight. He asked, "Try, be honest, is Khôi still alive?" Try turned back, looked straight at him. "Khôi lives in the mirror. Not just the small mirror on the desk, but in anything that reflects, even people's eyes." And's voice choked. "You're kidding, right?" Try shook his head. "You don't have to believe me. But ever since I learned I was the one who got to stay, I've never felt like I was living alone." A few days later, and began to notice strange things. In the morning, when he washed his face in the bathroom, the faucet ran normally. The mirror only showed in. But sometimes, in a fleeting glance, he saw a tangled-haired figure standing behind him, then disappearing when he looked straight on. He told Na. She listened, then after a long pause, said, "And you're not the first one to stay in that room after Khôi," and widened his eyes. "Really? I thought only Try stayed there before me?" Na nodded, then explained. "After Khôi disappeared, there was a student named Min who moved in with Try. He stayed exactly 1 week, then submitted a withdrawal letter. No one knew the reason, and let out a breath. Do you know where Min is now?" Na replied slowly. "No, his number's no longer in service. But I heard he once said, there's someone in there who never sleeps." That night, Try wasn't in the room, and studied alone, while he was taking notes. The room lights suddenly went out. He stood up, groped for the switch, still nothing. In the darkness, and heard the desk creak. From the mirror came a faint whisper. Try broke his promise. A chill ran down An's spine. He turned on his phone flashlight, pointing it straight at the mirror. Nothing there. But then, on the surface of the mirror, a faint line of text began to appear, as if written from the other side. "I refuse to be forgotten." The sound of the door creaked open. Try stepped inside. Light from the hallway spilled across his shoulders. Seen and trembling with his phone in hand, Try frowned. "You saw it again, didn't you?" and pointed to the mirror. There was writing. "Who wrote it?" Try? Try didn't answer right away. He walked over, placed his hand on the mirror, and gently wiped it. The writing faded. Try muttered softly, "If it writes again, that means it's not ready to leave," and couldn't take it anymore. He stood up, speaking urgently. "Try, just tell me the truth. Who is Khôi? A copy of you, or a real person?" Try turned to him, eyes sunk in deep. His voice was low, cold. "Khôi is the rejected part. From birth, he wasn't chosen, but he didn't disappear. He waited, and now, he wants to live in my place." After that night, Try grew even more silent. He no longer sat in front of the mirror. Every time he came back from class, he buried himself under the blanket, turned off the lights, and shut down his phone, and felt like the air in the room had grown tighter. Not because of the space, but because of a presence, like there was a third person staying. One that couldn't be seen. One evening, and came back late from class. When he pushed the door open, the light was still on. Try was sitting at the desk, holding a pen, writing in an old notebook, and set down his backpack. Gently asked, "You didn't go to class today?" Try didn't turn around, only replied in a flat tone. I'm doing homework, for both of us. In frowned. Both? Try paused for a few seconds. Then turned his head and gave a faint smile. I meant, me and you. In stepped closer, trying to see what he was writing. But Try suddenly snapped the notebook shut. Voice firm. It's nothing, just random scribbles. There was a flash of panic in Try's eyes, not like someone hiding homework, but as if he was guarding something deeply secret. That night, after and finished showering, he stepped out and saw the room door slightly ajar. Cold wind from the hallway slipped through the crack. The room was pitch black, and used his phone light to scan the room. Try wasn't in his bed, but he saw the mirror on the study desk had been turned to face the wall, and walked closer, about to touch it when he noticed a faint smudge on the back of the mirror, what looked like a small, thin handprint. He pulled his hand back, swallowed dryly. Just then, his phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. No name. You may not remember my face, but I've never left. And spine went cold. He looked again at the mirror, though it was turned to face the wall. The phone's light still reflected slightly, and in that dim glow, there were two silhouettes. One was his, and one, standing right behind his shoulder. The next morning, and sought out Na. He told her everything, the strange message, the handprint on the mirror, and how Try seemed to be losing his grip on reality. Na listened in silence, then said thoughtfully, I think, Try can no longer tell who he is and who Khôi is. And quickly asked, so is it possible that Khôi really came back to life? Na shook her head. Not exactly, but if the other doesn't let go, eventually, the real one could be pushed out. She paused, then said, tonight, come sleep in my room. I'm not comfortable letting you stay there. And nodded, though still confused inside. He went to Na's room around 10 at night. The girl's dorm was warmer, lit with soft yellow light, and carried a faint scent of lemongrass in the air. Na handed him a light blanket, saying, you can sleep on the spare bed over there. My roommate went home, and smiled softly. Thanks, sis. I didn't think going to college would mean hiding from my roommate. Na sat down on a chair, resting her chin in her palm, watching in. It's not Try's fault. I think he's just no longer in control of who he is. And lay down on the bed, eyes still on the ceiling. He spoke softly. I used to think Khôi was just a part of Try's imagination. But then, I started seeing things I couldn't explain. Na didn't say anything. After a while, she stood up, dimmed the lights, leaving only the soft glow of the desk lamp. Outside the window, a light drizzle fell. The wind rustled gently through the pine trees. Around midnight, and jolted awake by the sound of a soft knock, right at the room's door. Not urgent, not loud, just one knock, then silence. And sat up, heart racing. He glanced at Na. She was still asleep, facing the wall. Then another knock came, this time, knock, knock, and quietly stepped down from the bed, moved toward the door. He called out, softly, who's there? No response, only the sound of quiet breathing in the space beyond the door. And placed his hand on the doorknob. The moment he touched it, a voice spoke up very close. And, open the door. It's me, Try. The voice was identical. The pacing, the breath, not a single detail off. And froze. Stepping back, he spoke up. Try, why are you here? The voice answered, steady. I'm scared. You told me not to stay alone. Remember? And felt the skin on his hands go cold. In his mind, Try's warning from earlier flashed back. If it asks tonight, don't answer. No matter how much it looks like me. The voice outside continued, this time softer. And, I'm Try. Don't you remember? We shared our first bowl of noodles. I even gave you the egg. Remember? An's heart pounded. No one but Try would know that detail. But, if it was really Try, he wouldn't be knocking on the door in the middle of the night. And Try never called himself Dao that way when talking to him. And gathered all his courage and replied, wait a second, I'll open the door. Then he backed straight away from the door, not opening it. The voice outside spoke again, sharper now. And, you're clever, but I'm warning you. The door shook violently. The voice growled, sooner or later, you'll have to choose. Then silence. And stepped back, hands trembling. A minute later, he woke Na. Sis, someone just knocked on the door. Said they were Try. Na opened her eyes, looked toward the door. I didn't hear anything, but did you see anyone? And shook his head. No, but the voice sounded exactly like Try. Na sat up, her gaze serious. That wasn't Try. And asked softly. Then, was it Khôi? Na slowly nodded. It's mimicking, but it's not complete yet. If you open the door, it might step into our world. The next morning, and returned to room 204. The door was still locked, but when he opened it, Try wasn't there. On the desk, the notebook Try had been writing in was neatly placed, and walked over and opened the first page. The first line, written in shaky handwriting, read, "If I were you, would I have the right to live like you?" All morning, and didn't see Try. He asked a few classmates, but no one knew whether Try had shown up to class. After school, and stopped by the dorm management office to make sure. The elderly security guard sitting at the front nodded when and asked, "Ah, Try? Saw him leaving the gate around 5:30 this morning. He walked, didn't bring anything, and frowned. Are you sure? He didn't say anything about going somewhere." The guard nodded. "Yeah, he was alone. Gray jacket, baseball cap, but weird thing, I called out, and he didn't respond, and felt a weight sink into his chest." He thanked the guard and returned to the room. The notebook was still on the desk. He flipped through more pages. The handwriting was messy, like the writer couldn't control their own hand. "I see you every night. You live off my memories. But who is the real one?" He turned to the last page. There was a single line written in red ink. "It's time to give the roll back," and gripped the notebook tightly. Then put it in his backpack. He decided to return to Na's room. When Na saw the notebook, she looked through it for a long while, then quietly said, "And do you think Try is trying to let Khôi take over?" And asked back, "You mean Try wants to step back and make room?" Na nodded. "Possibly. Some people, when overwhelmed by obsession, start believing the copy in their mind deserves to live. And if Khôi really is a part of him, then the moment Try disappears, it could step out." And exhaled, resting his hand on his forehead. "If that's the case, where is Khôi now?" Na hesitated. "Maybe still around here." That night, and didn't return to his room. He slept in Na's. Around midnight, while reading a book in bed, An's phone suddenly lit up. A message from an unknown number appeared. "You keep sleeping over there, so who's gonna study for you?" And swallowed hard. Beneath the message was a photo. It was a picture of the study desk in room 204. With the notebook open, what chilled into his core was that the photo had been taken just 3 minutes ago. Early the next morning, and decided to go back. When he opened the door, he could hardly believe his eyes. Try was sitting there, wearing the gray jacket, hair soaking wet as if he'd just been out in the rain. He looked up and smiled. "See, I never left," and stood frozen. Then asked softly, "Try?" He smiled, a very light smile. "Yeah, I'm Try, the one who was kept." And didn't know why, but something felt off. Try's eyes were deeper, his voice lower, his right hand kept twitching, exactly like how Na once described Khôi. And asked again, "So, where's Khôi?" Try stood up and walked closer. His voice was very slow. "Khôi's gone, don't say that name again." He stopped right in front of An, looking straight at him, "Because now I'm the chosen one," and breathed heavily. He stepped back. That face looked exactly like Try's, but something about it was completely off. A primal instinct whispered in his mind, "That's not Try." Before An could say anything else, the door behind him slammed shut. A click echoed, the lock clicked into place. And turned around. There was no wind, no one else there. Just 2 people in one room. And no way to tell which one was real. The room seemed to shrink. And stood still, eyes fixed on Try, or the one now wearing Try's face. He was still smiling, a smile not exactly sinister, but no longer the Try that An had known. And asked slowly, "You? Who are you?" The other raised an eyebrow. "I'm Try, An's roommate, the one who always wakes up at 6 a.m., likes egg noodles, and listens to trend music while studying." and gritted his teeth. No, Try never called himself the chosen one. He never locked the room. Try gave a faint smirk. You're smarter than I thought. The voice still sounded the same, but the tone was wrong, and slowly backed away, his hand brushing against the phone in his pocket. He turned it on, intending to call Na, but the screen showed a message. No SIM card, and froze. He clearly remembered putting the SIM in. Try tilted his head, stepped closer. He held out his hand to in it lay an SIM card, sitting in the middle of his palm. I didn't want to be interrupted. This story is just for the two of us. And breathed hard. You're coy. Try didn't deny it. He nodded. You finally said my name. He took one more step forward, eyes cold and sharp. Let me ask you again. N, if you were me, and you knew you were the one left behind, wouldn't you want to keep living? And clenched his fists. I don't know who you are, but you're taking something that doesn't belong to you. Khôi laughed. Why doesn't it belong to me? I was the one taken away. I had a name, a cry, a heartbeat. Just because someone chose Try, I was pushed out of this world. Tell me, does that sound fair to you? And stayed silent. After a moment, he breathed slowly and said, I'm not the one who made that choice. And Try, he didn't choose who lives and who doesn't. It's just, you two were meant to be one. No one should live in place of the other. Khôi looked at In, the smile fading from his lips. He spoke softly. We used to be one. But then, I was forgotten. Right then, the door swung open. Na stood outside, panting, holding a ring of keys. She looked in and saw In standing against the wall, while Khôi stood in the center of the room, his face not reflected in the wardrobe mirror to the left. Na stepped inside, her voice urgent. N, back away. Khôi turned to her, his eyes no longer mocking but filled with sorrow. You want to banish me again? But I didn't do anything, except try to reclaim my share of life. Na gripped the keys tightly. You were already gone, Khôi. Now only one gets to live. Staying here breaks the rules. Khôi looked down at the floor. After a while, he softly asked, if I leave now, will anyone remember me? And stepped forward, voice calm. I will. Khôi looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. You mean that? And nodded. I'll remember you were part of Try. I won't erase you from this memory. Khôi stood in silence, then gave a faint smile. He turned and walked toward the wardrobe mirror. And for the first time, Khoi's reflection appeared clearly. He touched it, and the image in the mirror reached back. Khôi looked over, his gaze peaceful. Thank you for remembering my name. Then, he dissolved into the light within the mirror. The room fell silent. Only the sound of wind slipping through the slightly open window remained. And the SIM card dropped softly to the floor. The next morning, In woke up in his own room. Sunlight poured through the curtains, soft and golden. The wardrobe mirror was still there, reflecting the bed, the desk, the white wall. Nothing strange anymore. No one standing behind him. The door creaked open. Try walked in. His shirt was wrinkled, hair a mess, face pale like someone recovering from a long fever. Seeing In sitting there, Try froze for a moment, then quietly asked, I'm still here? And looked at him, a strange feeling rising. Not because Try seemed different, but because the real Try had returned. And spoke slowly. Yeah, you're here. Try stepped in and sat down on the bed. He put a hand to his forehead, eyes closed. After a while, he softly asked, Khôi, he's gone, right? And nodded. We sent him back to where he belongs. Try said nothing more. He just let out a long exhale. From that day on, Try was almost back to normal. No more late nights, no more scribbling in notebooks, no more staring into mirrors. He went to class, ate meals on time, even made tea for In like he did in the beginning. But In knew something had changed. At night, when the lights went out, he noticed Try would often glance toward the mirror. Just look, not say a word, and sometimes, Try would move his lips slightly, like calling out to someone, but no sound came out. A week later, Na met In at a cafe near the school. She said, And, are you doing okay? And smiled. A lot better now. Try's back to normal too. Na stirred her tea, voice quiet. Usually, things like this don't vanish completely. They just slip inside, waiting for another moment to return. And nodded, eyes distant. I know, but for now, at least, we still have time. Na didn't say more. She handed in an envelope and said, Min, the student who used to live with Tri left this for you. He told me, if Tri ever really changes, give it to you, and opened the letter. Inside was a single piece of paper. The handwriting slanted and aged. If you notice your shadow no longer follows your footsteps, then look into the mirror. But not for too long. Because you might see someone staring back at you, and it won't be you. That night, before bed, and turned off the lights, the room darkened, a breeze blew gently. He lay down, turning his back to the wardrobe mirror. But deep down, something still felt unsettled. And then suddenly, Tri spoke, very softly. And, if one day I forget again, will you remind me? And didn't turn around, just softly replied, yeah, I will. Tri fell silent. After a while, he added, as if speaking to himself, because if I forget, maybe it will remember. About 2 weeks later, everything gradually settled, and got back into the rhythm of studying. Tri also became more sociable, starting conversations with classmates. No one mentioned Khôi anymore. Room 204 suddenly felt just like any other dorm room, and almost believed everything had ended. Until, one evening, while An was reviewing his notes, Na texted, have you ever looked in the mirror and seen yourself smile before you actually did? And shivered slightly. He sat up straight and replied, why are you asking that? Na responded a few seconds later, yesterday, I looked into the wardrobe mirror in your room. For 3 seconds, I saw your face, but it wasn't you. That gaze wasn't from someone whole. And put down his phone. Swallowing hard, he turned to look at the wardrobe mirror. It still reflected the room, bright, quiet, nothing unusual. But the desk lamp's soft light was just enough for a face to appear a fraction of a second before the real-world movement. And stared intently. Then suddenly, his reflection in the mirror smiled before he had time to. The next morning, Tri was the one who invited into a small cafe on campus. The two sat out on the porch. Tri stirred his iced milk slowly, eyes deep in thought. After a moment, he said, have you ever felt like you were being watched from the inside? And paused. What do you mean? Tri didn't answer directly. He just looked straight into An's eyes. Voice low. Last night, I had a dream. In the dream, I was you. And frowned. You were me? Tri nodded. I was in your body. Living like you. Breathing like you. But no one noticed. Everyone called me in. A chill crept up An's spine. He asked, and you stayed as me the whole dream? Tri shook his head. No. At some point, I looked into a mirror. And in it, there was someone else. He didn't smile. Didn't speak. He just stared at me, and repeated every word I said. Just half a second late, Tri clenched his coffee cup. His eyes locked on An. I'm not even sure it was a dream. That afternoon, while studying in a group, and passed by the printing room, the glass door of the large printer reflected the hallway, and in the split second he glanced over, and saw himself walking in the opposite direction. Meaning, in the reflection, his figure was walking toward him. Not alongside him. He froze. A few classmates turned and asked, An, what's wrong? And gave a half smile. Shook his head. Nothing, just a bit dizzy. But inside, An knew something was starting to shift. That night, An couldn't sleep. He stared into the mirror in the bathroom, for the first time looking deep into the eyes of his reflection, and felt that the thing inside the mirror wasn't entirely him anymore. He turned and walked away. But when he reached the door, the reflection was still standing there, motionless, unmoving. The next morning, Na called An out. She handed him a stack of documents, with a small note at the end. Rare case. An individual split into two states of existence, the self and the reflection. The reflection forms at moments of emotional distortion, when the self can no longer face itself. And read up to that point. Then looked at Na. You think I'm... Na slowly nodded. Maybe. Khôi didn't completely vanish. But this time, he's not inside Tri. He chose you. It had been drizzling since noon. And stood in front of the mirror in the third-floor restroom, the least used in the dorm. The ceiling light flickered gently. The steady sound of rain mixed with the dripping from a leaky faucet. And looked at himself again. The reflection stared back at him, not blinking, not moving, not even slightly, and slowly raised his right hand. The mirror raised a hand too, but it was the left. And spoke, voice low and steady. "Who are you?" The figure in the mirror mouthed back, "Who are you?" and swallowed hard, gripping the sink. He spoke slowly. "I am in, the one who lived for real. Studied, remembered, feared, not something made up to take my place." The reflection still smiled, a faint, crooked smile. It replied, "I feared too, I studied too, I remembered you," and took a deep breath. His face tense from staying calm. "If you're me, then you know, I don't run. I don't retreat. I don't live in anyone's shadow." The image in the mirror stayed still, silent. Then suddenly, it stepped back. And remained motionless, didn't move. The reflection stepped back, one more step. Outside in the hallway, footsteps echoed. Try came running, panting at the door. "Anne, are you okay? Why are you up here alone?" And didn't turn around. He just stared at the mirror. His right hand hung limply. His shoulders trembled slightly. Try stepped inside, placed a hand on Anne's shoulder. "Are you all right?" and asked softly, eyes never leaving the mirror. "Try, do you see anyone in the mirror?" Try looked in the direction Anne was staring. He saw only Anne, alone, nothing else. Try nodded. "Yeah, I see you," and slowly exhaled. He closed his eyes for a second, then turned away. The mirror behind them quietly reflected the two of them. Not a beat off, no one out of sync, no one frozen in place. Only, in the corner of the mirror, near the far right edge, there was a faint smudge, as if someone's shoulder hadn't quite pulled back in time. That afternoon, the rain stopped. The door to room 204 was slightly ajar. A breeze blew in, flipping the last page of Try's old notebook. A blank page, but in the lower corner, faint and slanted, was a single line of writing. "If I'm gone, then live for me."